Hello, everyone. This is the 148th episode of the Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and the Soccer Nostalgia blog. Unfortunately, Mr. Paul Whittle from the 1888 letter blog could not make it this time. For this episode, I interview Bulgarian linguist, educator, writer, and editor Dr. Ivan Muhov as we discuss the Bulgarian national team during the 1986 World Cup. Welcome, Ivan.
Thank you. Nice to hear from you, Shahan.
Can you please introduce yourself and your trajectory into football?
Hello, my name is Ivan. I'm from Bulgaria. I am 50 years old. I've been a football fan since 1980. That would make me 6 years old when I started watching and also playing football. My grandfather and my uncle, they transferred their football for passion to me, and I've been an avid supporter of Bulgarian football, international football as well, ever since. The first matches I watched, I remember, were those from the 1980 Euro finals. I watched some matches from the group stage, and then I watched certainly a match for the third place between Czechoslovakia and Italy, and by all means the final between Belgium and West Germany. So in other words, the first matches that I watched, there was no Bulgarian participation since we failed to qualify for this particular forum. But I've been closely following the Bulgarian national squad ever since. And I can say I've been supporting them in both their failures and successes. It's been fluctuating trajectory, as you well know, Bulgarian football. But we've had our ups, we certainly had our downs, and we see what the future holds for us.
For this discussion, we look at the participation in the 1986 World Cup. Can you describe the status of Bulgarian football domestically and at international level in these early 80s in the Cold War era?
The early 80s, well, domestically, CSK Sofia, who were the most celebrated and the most renowned team in Bulgarian football at the time, were coming from a 3-year unsuccessful run. For 3 consecutive years, they failed to become champions of Bulgaria. This for the first time since the late 1950s. They lost to 2 other teams from the capital, Levski Sofia, that were always breathing down their necks throughout the 70s. The other team was Lokomotiv Sofia. But they managed to rise again. And what followed was they became champions of Bulgaria 4 years in a row, 1980 to 1983. And internationally, they were also doing quite well, I should say. They beat Nottingham in 1981, right after the English team had become champions of Europe 2 years in a row. They pretty much sent them to oblivion. And a year later, they defeated Liverpool in the quarters, again in the European Champions Cup. So I think that club-wise, well, mostly reflected in the exploits of CSK Sofia. I could say that we were doing pretty well. But unfortunately, this wasn't adequately reflected in Bulgarian national squad performance. 1980 started with our failure to early qualify for the 1982 FIFA World Cup in Spain. We were in a fairly strong group, West Germany, Austria as well. We came short. We could have gotten the second place. We came 2 points short of Austria. We did have some good matches. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And the first step taken by the Bulgarian Football Federation, respectively the Bulgarian government, was to replace the coach, because someone had to pay for this failure. Because with this fact, with us being unable to qualify for FIFA World Cup in Spain, this was the 4th consecutive unsuccessful attempt. The last one was in 1974, the FIFA World Cup in Germany. This means that in this 8-month period, we missed 2 Euro finals, 2 World Cup finals with this included. So someone had to be brought, someone who could possibly fix this dry run. And this is when Ivan Vucov came in. His first task was to put us finally on the Euro final stage for the 1984 championship in France. So this was the first hurdle that he had to overcome with the national squad. He had already proved himself as a fairly successful football coach with Levski Sofia. He took over the team in 1975. And with him, the team managed to come out of obscurity. This is the time when they became champions of Bulgaria twice, as I mentioned earlier. He'd proven his mettle in the football coach circles. And even though his first spell, this qualification for the 1984 Euro finals, was not very successful, we couldn't qualify. We were in a relatively easy group back then, Yugoslavia, Wales, and Norway. I remember those matches as I watched them, where Yugoslavia were arguably the favorites, having qualified for the World Finals in Spain earlier. And yeah, we came third, but we did play well. We were narrowly beaten whenever we lost those matches against Yugoslavia again and Wales. But again, it wasn't a good enough effort. Our footballers had to watch this tournament from the TV sets in their homes for the uptime time.
Can you describe the trajectory of the Bulgarian manager Ivan Vutsov as a player?
As a player, he did have his spell with the Bulgarian national squad, by all means. I think he accumulated about 24 or 25 participations altogether. Those were largely in the 5-year period between 1962 and 1966. He did participate in the World Cup finals in England in 1966, but this is the time when, unfortunately, luck abandoned him. In the match against Portugal, he scored an own goal. It was a fairly spectacular goal, to be honest, a plunging header, which left no chances for our goalkeeper. But the pressure was high. The Portuguese were attacking all the time, so we could understand that our defenders were very busy. He got panicked and he just headed the ball into our goal. Not a very auspicious beginning for him on such a prestigious forum. And even more unfortunately, a few days later against Hungary, he almost repeated the same feat. But this time the ball ricocheted in the leg of another Bulgarian defender and again ended up in our goal. Very unfortunate and quite sad, I should say, because he was a strong, solid defender for Levski Sofia for 10 years previously and during that time as well. He did deserve to be amongst those players that played in the international tournaments, but that obviously these underwhelming interference that he had affected his subsequent involvement with the Bulgarian national squad. But yes, he was a solid player in defense. And it was quite sad that fortune didn't smile at him in England. He did leave a mark in Levski Sofia as well, where he spent most of his active career as a player. He did come back to Levski again 9 years after this fiasco in England, but as a coach. And this is where he brought Levski back to stardom with the mentioned performances and the championships that they won.
Let's look at the World Cup qualification for 1986 at Mexico.
Yes.
Bulgaria were in a group with the recent European champions, France of Michel Platini, again, Yugoslavia, East Germany, as well as Luxembourg. I imagine ahead of this, France would obviously be the favorites, maybe along with Yugoslavia. So it was a big surprise that Bulgaria edged out Yugoslavia and East Germany. Can you summarize this qualification phase?
First, we have to start with the premise that, having in mind the several previous failures, although the team was very good and we had some undisputable talents, obviously gelling together was not very easy, and they failed to achieve international success. Again, because of the reigning European champions, France, one of the best teams in the world, it was clear that what we had to do is try to edge out East Germany and Yugoslavia for the second place in the group. The beginning was kind of underwhelming, I should say. We drew 0-0 against Yugoslavia in the first match, which was a match that we could have won. We played better in the first half in particular. We could have won the match, but we didn't. So both our first matches were away. Then a month later, we played France in Paris. It was again a fairly close match. We had even more chances in the first half. We could have again won it, but unfortunately, it was the French that took the upper hand. Michel Platini, he scored a penalty in the second half, and that was it. We started with a draw and a loss. In other words, the Bulgarian football fandom probably had to swallow another pill. Of course, there were other matches left, but again, we were just like coming close to winning a match, and again, we were vanquished in a variety of ways. But then I can't say that a miracle occurred. We just steamrolled into greatness, like literally. We won the next 5 matches, and we technically qualified even before the last match against East Germany, which we lost 2-1. It was a narrow loss. I'm not quite sure if there was, I don't know, maybe some kind of arrangement between the two governments to give a chance to the Germans to qualify at the expense of France, in case of France failed to beat Yugoslavia in their last match in Paris. Thankfully, that did not happen. France won it 2-0. Because just try to imagine the 1986 World Cup finals without France. Yeah, this was a group that we actually started believing that after 4 consecutive wins and that we were there, that we could even make it at the very, the World Cup final in Mexico. We even tested the waters there, played a friendly against East Germany again later, which we lost 2-1, but that wasn't a fairly big deal. But yes, we were quite happy to see that this talented lineup finally had a chance at the World Cup performance at the World Cup. And we believed that we could achieve 2 main goals that we had failed in our previous 4 appearances, to score a win and to proceed to the second stage, to go over the group stage. So these 2 targets, we kind of thought that would finally be achieved with the team that we had at the time.
The highlight of the qualification was the win against France on May 2nd, 1985, when Bulgaria won 2-0, scoring off of 2 corner kicks
Yes.
by Dimitrov, the first one, and a header by Nasko Sirakov for the
Nasko
second
Sirakov,
one.
yes.
A month before that defeated East Germany with a late goal. Following the match with France on June 1st, they defeated Yugoslavia. And of course, the wins against Luxembourg were expected.
They were more or less expected. I mean, they were like a given. We knew that Luxembourg wouldn't be an obstacle, so we had to focus on beating the other 3 teams, and we did a very good job out of that. When mentioning the friendly against East Germany that happened later, early 1986, we did have a series of friendly matches after we qualified. Those were up and down affairs. We won a few, we lost a few. We drew against Morocco, I remember that, on their home turf. So we did prepare well for the 1986 finals. Again, the atmosphere was quite propitious. I mean, we were thinking that this would be the time that this talented lineup would probably make it to achieve these 2 goals. These 2 targets, something we failed doing back in the 1970s and the 1960s, when we also had some talented squads. So again, this team had to measure up against the talents that we had previously. Would they be able to hit these 2 targets, something that even our 1960s team with Petr Žekov, Georgios Peruchov, Dmitry Yakimov couldn't fail to do. So I don't think there was a heavy boulder laying on their shoulders in the 1980s, but definitely there were some hopes raised that we could make it further than the group stage, I mean.
At the end of the 1984-85 season, there had been the infamous CSK and Levski brawl in the final of the Bulgarian Cup. Can you describe this event and its ramifications on Bulgarian football as well as the national team?
This was a memorable moment for Bulgarian football history. You had the 2 most celebrated teams of Bulgaria playing in the final. There have always been sparkles flying here and there when these 2 teams were playing, because they were by far the best football teams for a long stretch of time. This was also the time when Levski again managed to come out of second obscurity. They won and they became champions of Bulgaria 2 years in a row. And they wanted to grab this chance and win the cup. But the thing is that the entire scuffle started from a very innocent foul. But there were a few heated arguments before that moment. There was this Levski player, Emil Spasov, I remember. He was attacking on the right. He was fouled by the CSKA defender. The referee naturally gave the foul, but the CSKA defender disputed it. I mean, probably he must have said something derogatory Spasov's way. So Spasov came back and shook his head. Wasn't anything too extreme, but then this CSKA player came and pushed Spasov away. And then you saw players from both on and off the pitch swarming around them. There were a few kicks and punches exchanged, but it wasn't anything too extreme, nothing that you haven't seen before or after on stadiums in other parts of the world. Things were put under control. It didn't take that long. But yeah, it was a scuffle, all right. But I think that the Bulgarian Football Federation and the Bulgarian government in general, they just saw this as an opportunity to show who still ruled there, to exercise some authority. I think we also have to consider the political climate at the time. The perestroika had begun, more or less. Obviously, there would be changes in the few years to come. So yeah, exercising authority and grabbing an opportunity like this was quite, they overplayed it. I mean, they overreacted, the Bulgarian authorities, to what happened. And this was something that probably wasn't even thought over very, very carefully, because we still were in the qualification stage. We haven't exactly qualified. So you can't bring those footballers down, ban them for life and whatever, and expect them to perform adequately on those matches. And of course, those bans were lifted very quickly. But other measures were taken. Probably, I'm not sure if you know that the names of the two teams were changed.
Oh yes, Sredets and Vitorsha, yeah.
That's right. That's it. So yeah, they had to play several years under those monikers for a while. The turmoil that grasped aftermath, there were, of course, the Bulgarian football fan base was not very happy with those decisions, because you had pretty much the entire nation behind either of these two teams. Like the whole population was split to two camps. But at least there were some who benefited from this turmoil. I have to mention this. Beroe, the team from my hometown, Stara Zagora. It's a city in the center of Bulgaria. They became champions the very next year. They used this answer not very certain times. But yeah, this was something that did leave a mark on Bulgarian football. Thankfully, the national squad performed very well. Justice more or less was restored in the oncoming years.
This brawl also involved a certain Risto Stoichkov.
Yeah, I mean, they were all there. I mean, from the CSKA side, also from the Levski side, with Yaroslav Mikhailov, Nikolov, Sirakov were also there. From the CSK side, yeah, of course, you had Stoichkov.
So besides the name changes, lifetime suspensions were given to Borislav Mikhailov, Plamen
Yes,
Nikolov, Emil Velev, and
Emil Vele.
Emil Spasov, and Nasko Sirakov and Miroslav Bechev and Vasil Tinchev were suspended for a year. Kostadin Yanchev was suspended for 3 months, I
3
believe.
months.
As a result of this brawl, Borislav Mikhailov was the starting goalkeeper. Mikhailov and Sirakov were integral members of the national team. Mikhailov and Sirakov, their bans were lifted in 1986 ahead of the World Cup. How was this decision viewed at the time?
Well, the thing is that obviously, if you were to perform at such a prestigious international forum, you wanted all the talents, all the good players to be there. Otherwise, imagine like we failed in every department at the tournament, and then different blames would be thrown in different directions. So why not, provided that we failed 5 previous attempts to qualify, and now we had this golden chance, why miss it? Why not put all the great players that we have out there, so that we could finally make it to like the second stage and perform more adequately for the world to see? So I think it wasn't really that hard for those bans to be lifted. I think the decision was taken probably even way before the actual beginning of the tournament. because we've got to see Sirakov, we've got to see Mikhailov play there. They were an indispensable part of the Bulgarian squad, and we had to give it all in order to play well. So I think this was the right decision, and the Bulgarian football fandom was enormously relieved that the decision was in favor of the football players and the entire football audience in the country. I'm not really sure that there were any particular, was any bickering amongst the members of the Bulgarian Football Federation regarding this decision.
I think the football union chairman, Ivan Shpatov, I think he was against it. But Vutsov was able to convince Todor Zhivkov that he definitely needed these players and something had to be done.
Well, the Bulgarian Football Federation, I think they were more stubborn in a way that, I mean, if you behave in such a way, your rowdy, unruly behavior really needs to be punished. So if we had taken a decision like this, we should stand by it. But again, I think Vutsov knew that he wanted all the talented players at his disposal on this forum. He really wanted this one to matter. After all, he was the coach. And I think he did have to have this final conversation with our prime minister at the time, yes, Todor Zhivkov. He had to try and see whether a decision could be taken on the highest possible level. And I think, yes, he did manage to persuade the Bulgarian government to lift those bans. And fair play to that. I mean, you saw that we really needed them. Mikhailov had some fine saves. Sirakov played fairly well, scored the first goal over there against Italy. So I should say that, yes, I know you always take, during those times, of course, you always take certain risks when you had to face the very upper echelons of the Bulgarian government. But Vutsov, he had to take it. He really wanted to see everyone, especially those players from Levski Sofia, the team that he grew up with, the team that he put all his efforts, both as a player and a coach. So he really went the extra mile to try and help them participate on this event.
Do you have any memory of a song called Mexico by Bratia Argirovi?
Yes. Oh, that's a good. Oh, and thanks for reminding me. Actually, I'll play this song after we are done here. Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do. This is how Bulgarian entertainment sector used to celebrate this one. I can't even recall if we had actually particular songs composed for these occasions previously. Well, I wasn't born at the time. I mean, before 1974. So, but I know. But this one, yeah, the euphoria was pretty big. The euphoria was pretty big. We liked the team that we had at the time, and yeah, that was a one big hit that was played along the radios and the television for quite some time.
I think it's fair to say that unlike 1994, where there was a big star like Hristos Stoichkov, this squad was largely unknown outside of Bulgaria and was essentially a team that was bigger than some of its parts.
Yes, for example, like you can't really say that in the 1990s team, yes, everyone was talking about Hristos Stoichkov, Barcelona player, and he was playing. I mean, he had some outstanding, marvelous performances, both for the national squad and Barcelona. So yeah, the whole world knew him and those around him. But yeah, in the 1980s, we didn't really have very big international exposure when it came to individual players. Previously, we had two players from Slavia Sofia, Andrei Zhelaskov and Shavdar Tvetkov, who played abroad. Zhelaskov studied in Feyenoord, which was a fairly strong team back then. Shavdar Tvetkov, one of the finest Bulgarian football players I've played, my personal favorite, actually. He went to Austria, Vienna, from Slavia again, where he found himself in the company of Petko Petkov, another player from Beroe, a team from my hometown, who had also joined the Austrians earlier. But that was pretty much it. And then it was the mid-1980s when Bulgarian players started receiving contracts for other teams in Europe. And by the time the actual tournament started in 1986, we already had other players playing abroad, mostly players of CSK Sofia. We had Stoicho Mladenov. He went to Belenenses in Portugal. Radoslav Zdravkov, he moved to France. Plamen Markov, another former CSK player, he was playing for Metz. In France, we had Georgi Slavkov. He was from Trachea, Botiv Plovdiv. He had moved to Saint Etienne, where Georgi Dimitrov, the Bulgarian national squad captain, ended up as well. So yeah, the 1980s were times when things started moving around, and we did provide some players for some prestigious European clubs. But again, at the end of the day, we couldn't really point the finger at us. We couldn't say that, yes, this is the leader, this is the favorite, this is the focal point of everyone else. This is the one like you should listen to. There wasn't really a clear favorite player. We didn't like have a football player like becoming footballer of the year like 3 consecutive years. We had different Stoichmodel. We had Stoichmodel, we had Georgi Dimitrov and others. So again, there wasn't a clear favorite. They were not very known outside the boundaries of Bulgaria. They weren't like top scorers for, say, Liverpool or Bayern Munich at the time. This is when you have this united spirit, when you when you don't have to necessarily follow a leader, when you can actually produce some fine performances and make yourself known, which should have been the case with our team when they went to Mexico. Yeah, so it was a consensus. Everyone had favorites. Everyone had, Stoichkov Model. Everyone said, but Nasko Sirakov, Georgi Dimitrov. Let's not forget also, this was also the time when some players from provincial clubs also made their mark on Bulgarian football, especially these players from Spartak, from the town of, from the city of Pleven in the north of Bulgaria, Plamen Getov in attack, Nikolai Arabov, very strong defender, Alexander Markov. So they all stayed true to their team in Pleven, and they did play very well for the Bulgarian team. So yeah, no clear favorites, and I think this was probably the team spirit was pretty much there, I should say, regardless of the scuffle a year earlier between Levski and CSK. They were united and they did perform well, I should say, to their best abilities.
Ahead of the World Cup, Vutsov had said that we are not a team of stars. We rely more on team spirit.
Yes.
We are good in defense, but lack in attack. But I still think we can make it to the last 16.
I think that this was an adequate observation. After all, he was the coach that broke the vicious cycle of coaches being replaced every 2 years right after an unsuccessful qualification campaign. He wasn't sacked when we failed to qualify for the Euro finals in France. He stayed on. Obviously, the government and the Bulgarian Football Federation, respectively, they saw something in him and they decided to give him a second chance. He managed to gel the team and he probably knew, but I should say that we didn't really lack much in attack, to be perfectly honest. We had some very good strikers back then. Stoichmodel of Plamen Getov again. It was probably unfortunate that at this forum, the currently the time champions from Beroe again, we have a Silver Golf. He was a striker from there. He wasn't given a chance to perform at this tournament. But I think we were quite good altogether in midfield as well. The team was playing well. There was this smoothness flow from one side to the other. I can't say that we lacked in attack. We had the Siako, of course. Anja Sodeko from Lokomotiv Plovdiv. He made some really incisive runs that would stay in the memory. We did have what it took to make an impact.
From the backbone of his team, we should mention that Borislav Mihailov and Nasko Sirakov would be the only remnants that would appear in the 1994 World Cup.
Yes, they were. They were in their mid-20s back then. So they definitely had a few more tournaments after that one. And I think that it was good that they survived all the way to the 1990s because they were still fairly good performers, if you remember, in the United States as well. So, yeah, they were the only two. They were also from the younger batch that appeared a little after the CSK stalwarts, Bravkov, Mladenov, Tsetan Yonchev earlier, Georgi Vilinov, also the goalkeeper, whom Borislav Mihailov replaced. It was good that they retained the quality of their performance all the way to the mid-1990s. I think that was commendable what they achieved.
Looking at the preparation friendlies, they were, I would say, average or unimpressive. They lost to Spain in December, on December 18th, 2-0.
That was the first one, yes.
Yeah. Then they go on a tour of Mexico where they play against clubs in January and February. Then you mentioned the
East Germany
friendly,
match.
yeah, East Germany, which was in Mexico as well. Then the scoreless tie against Morocco. They defeated Romanian B side. They defeat Denmark. That was surprising on
And then
April.
North Korea.
Yeah, yeah,
And
as
don't
well as
forget
North
that.
Korea. Yeah, but they lose to Belgium. Like
Yeah, we lost.
there's like three matches within a couple of weeks. Finally, in May, they go to West Germany and play against club sides before heading out to Mexico for the World Cup, where they play a couple of friendlies there as well before the main event. So not much could be determined from these friendly matches.
No, there was a very fluctuating performance. We won a few, we lost a few, we drew a few. I mean, at the same time, I'm not sure what like the authorities and respectively the Bulgarian fan base were expecting from those friendlies. After all, the deed was done. We did qualify. So if we decide like to give our best afterwards in the buffer period between the qualifications and the World Cup, but I mean, for me, the fact that they didn't, they probably had a few underwhelming performances, but I don't think anyone was expected all those matches to be won. After all, we lost to Belgium and Spain. They were all reputable forces on the football circuit. They weren't like some unknowns. It wasn't something that was largely unexpected at the time. We were also too eager to see. We weren't probably following those friendlies that stringently. I think I only remember I watched the match against Spain, against Belgium, the match against East Germany. I'm not sure if I even watched. So it's just that the anticipation was too big for this for the finals in Mexico, for anyone to take notes about every loss that we experienced during this buffer period. We knew that we were there, and we knew that if we could save ourselves, like save energy at all, and because let's not forget that the climate conditions, like the weather and the situation there was quite challenging. So we had to adjust to it. We had to get accustomed to what the conditions were there. So there were quite a few things to be taken into consideration, and I don't think anyone was spitting excessively our football squad's way if they happened like to lose a match here and there. And it wasn't like a deplorable performance. We did have several wins. I think it was pretty much even 3-3 or something. I mean, I'm talking about the ones against the other national squads, not against the club teams that we played in Mexico and elsewhere. I believe probably, I mean, it's much not better, but imagine like a team winning all those friendlies and then they flop deplorably when they show up at the very tournament. And in our case was just all right. So our like team, they played well. They lost a few, two actually, in the qualification groups. Now if they lose a few more during the friendlies, we are not going to turn this into an unpardonable. We won't consider this an unpardonable sin. They will be there. Let's see what they do.
Let's look at the final 22 players selected for this World Cup. For goalkeepers, Bulgaria took only two goalkeepers instead of three. At number one, we have starting goalkeeper Borislav Mikhailov of Vitosha. And his backup was at number 22, Ilya Valov of Botevratsa. Yeah. In defense, number three, you have Nikolai Arabov of Sliven. Number four, Petar Petrov of Sredets. Number five, captain of the team, Gorgi Dimitrov of Sredets. Number 12, Radoslav Zdravkov of Sredets. Number 13, Alexander Markov of Spartak Pleven. And number 21, Ilya Dyakov of Dobruja Dobrich. In midfield, number 2, we have Nasko Sirakov of Vitosha. Number 6, Andrei Zhelyaskov, who was playing at Strasbourg in France.
Yes.
Number 8, Anyo Satkov of Lokomotiv Plovdiv. Number 10, Zhivko Gospodinov of Spartak Varna. Number 11, Plamen Getov of Spartak Pleven. Number 15, Gorgi Yordanov of Lokomotiv Sofia. Number 17, Risto Kolev of Lokomotiv Plovdiv. Number 19, Atanas Pashev of Trakia Plovdiv. Now we come to the striker. Number 7, Božidar Iskrenov of Vitosha. Number 9, Stoicho Mladenov of Sredets. Number 14, Plamen Markov
Mark
of Metz in
Net.
France. Number 16, Vasil Dragolov of Berostara Zagora. Number 18, Boycho Velichkov of Lokomotiv
Lokomotiv
Sofia. And number 20, Kostadin Kostadinov of Trakia Plovdiv.
Plovdiv. Yeah, all these names, they meant something by all means for the Bulgarian football fan base. And we did have a good pool of talents that would make us, proud on such a forum. We lost two very good players from the past. Rusy Kochev, he was playing for Vitosha, Levski Sofia, earlier Cvetan Yonchev. They were both retired or semi-retired at this stage, but Georgi Slavkov wasn't summoned from Trakia Plovdiv earlier, and then Saint Etienne. That was probably the only omission that was glaring. But the others were all pretty much the cream of Bulgarian football, the names that you mentioned. We were looking toward making a bigger impact this time and hitting those two goals that I mentioned previously. For me, I didn't really have, personally, I didn't have any favorites. I liked all the players there. I was a big fan of Cvetan Yonchev, who are already retired from international football, but from the Bulgarian squad at the time. He wasn't selected, but all the others were very strong players, every single one that you mentioned. For the goalkeepers, yeah, definitely. Volov and Mikhailov. There wasn't like Vilinov was already kind of past his prime, Georgi Vilinov. So it wasn't a big surprise that he wasn't called in at the time. For the others, I'm surprised that Petko Tenev, another defender at Beroe, champions from my hometown, he wasn't called in. I think he did play. He was probably later summoned, not before that. But for the World Cup, yeah, I think he wasn't in the squad. Others, not any glaring omissions from the pool that we had at the time. Pretty much everyone was there, lined up, fully operational.
Bulgaria played in the World Cup opener for this 1986 World Cup. So on May 31st, they faced off against defending World Cup champions Italy at the Azteca at Mexico City. So Bulgaria were in a group with Italy, South Korea, and Argentina. On May 31st, against Italy, we have the following lineup. Mikhailov, Sirakov, Arabov, Dimitrov, captain of the team.
Yeah.
Iskrenov, he replaced by Kostadinov in the 66th minute. Satkov, Mladenov, Gospodinov, he replaced by Zhelyaskov in the 74th minute. Getov, Zdravkov, and Markov. For the Italians, a lot of familiar faces. Some of the 1982 World Cup winners, Cabrini, Scirea, Alessandro Altobelli, Bruno Conti, among others.
Yes.
Altobelli would give Italy the lead in the 43rd minute.
43rd minute.
Yeah. It looked like they were headed for a win until 5 minutes before the end, when Alexander Markov crossed from the right side and Sirakov headed in the tying goal. The World Cup started in a satisfactory fashion for the Bulgarians. Next, they played against South Korea, that everyone would have expected them to win this match.
Oh, yes.
This match was on June 5th at Mexico City, but in the stadium of Estadio Olímpico Universitario, the stadium of UNAM. This match was played in the rain. South Korea would surprise the Bulgarians in this match with their play. But let's look at the lineup first. We have Mikhailov, Sirakov, Arabov, Petrov, Dimitrov, captain of the team, Iskrenov, he'd be replaced by Kostadinov in the 46th minute, Satkov, Stoicho Mladenov, Gospodinov, Getov, he'd be replaced by Zhelyaskov in the 58th minute, and Zdravkov. So Bulgaria would take the lead in the 11th minute. Mladenov crossed from the left side, and the South Korean goalkeeper pushed out the ball, but it fell to Getov, who volleyed in the loose ball. Predictably, Bulgaria had the lead. But then South Korea actually started playing well. They would tie the match in the 70th minute. A South Korean free kick was headed out by the Bulgarian defense.
We cleared it.
Korean player Kwang Rae Cho headed it back into the box, and then it was chested by Jong Bu Kim, who then turned and scored. And the match ended as a 1-1 tie. It was disappointing for Bulgaria, who expected to get 2 points from this match. This is before heading out to play their third match
against
Argentina of Diego Maradona. This match against Argentina was on June 10th, again at Mexico City, but at the UNAM Stadium, Estadio Olímpico Universitario. For Argentina, you have all the familiar faces who would win the 1986 World Cup: Diego Maradona, Valdano,
Burchaga.
Exactly. For Bulgaria, we have the following lineup. Bulgaria wearing red for this match. You have Mikhailov, Petrov, Dimitrov, Zhelyazkov, Satkov, Mladenov. He'd be replaced by Velichkov in the 54th minute. Getov, Alexander Markov, Plamen Markov, Gori Yordanov, Nasko Sirakov, and he'd be replaced by Zdravkov in the 71st minute. Argentina takes the lead in the 3rd minute when Kusifio's cross from the right side was Valdano. And in the 79th minute, Argentina doubled its lead when Diego Maradona crossed from the left side, and this time
Burchaga scored it.
Bulgaria still had not won any World Cup match in their history. But surprisingly, they qualified to the next round.
We did make it to the next round.
As one of the better third place teams, which is amazing given their record.
But no, this was this new rule favored us big time back then, and we were happy in a way that we managed to squeeze through the next stage, although the utmost target to win a match again remained very elusive.
Against Argentina, Bulgaria played with 7 midfielders and 1 striker.
Yes,
I think they knew just a narrow loss would see them qualify.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the thing is that we, again, seeing the group at the beginning, we were again a bit discouraged. I mean, the last 2 world champions were in the same group as you. I mean, what were the odds? Of course, you have a seeming outsider, South Korea, but again, they were always proved themselves as a dark horse. Imagine the North Korean team in the 1966. So this could have been something similar. So again, this was a group that we could have qualified. Probably again, this draw against Italy was a fortunate one, but we did play well, actually, especially in the second half. So we kind of deserved to score this late goal. And we saw ourselves, the pressure from the fact that we would open the entire tournament playing against the world champions, was definitely there. And the fact that we managed to leave the football pitch unbeaten was already a sign that we could eventually make it. So a draw against the reigning world champions. Then the second match, definitely the win that we all had been hoping for would come. Inevitably, it had to. Although the weather conditions were terrible with the rain that never stopped, we still had our good chances. We had this early goal by Getov, and we did push forward. But yeah, the Koreans surprised us that they didn't back down. And the second half, they grouped themselves. It's a much more sensible football. A kind of a mistake on our side, the defenders, that they couldn't quite clear the ball from the free kick, and that it ended in our goal after it happened. But we didn't really have time to react, and I think the football players were worn out by the terrible weather conditions as well, so we couldn't score. We couldn't win this match, and we were left with playing against Argentina, the 1978 world champions, with Maradona in tow. So how would you beat them to finally register this first win? This was next to impossible. And this early goal that Valdano scored, literally singed our ambitions even further. But again, they didn't outclass us. They didn't decisively outplay us. It was an even match throughout a large portion of the time. But the second goal after Burchaga, when he scored, it was obvious that no, that's it. We will be beaten, and then we only had to wait to see if we could manage to squeeze for the next stage during this new rule that was imposed back then. the better the third place teams would be able to proceed. And we were one of the lucky ones. I can't even remember whether the belief was really strong that we could at least finally win this coveted first, register this coveted first win against the hosts. And they were a pretty strong squad back then with Negrete, with Sanchez as well. So
managed by the legendary Bora Milutinovic.
Well, he did produce some fairly strong teams throughout his career. He managed to rise quite a few teams for the World Cup finals. And Mexico was just one of them. We just went out to see, why not? A miracle can occur. In the middle of Mexico, you shatter the hosts. Just one goal would have done it. But this was the time, you must remember this first goal.
Oh, yeah. Well, so
spectacular.
this match, which was on June 15th, the second round, Bulgaria again wearing red under the scorching midday heat of Mexico City at Azteca. This goal that you mentioned has gone down as one of the most legendary goals in the history of the World Cup.
Sure.
For anyone who hasn't seen, that's where he does a combination play with Aguirre, and then he acrobatically just volleys it from the edge of the box.
And it was marvelous. And he was personally think that Negrete was far the best Mexican player they produced in the 1980s. He also was assisted for the second goal.
Bulgaria's lineup, we have Mikhailov, Arabov, Petrov, Dimitrov, Satkov, Gospodinov, Getov. He'd be replaced by Sirakov in the 59th minute, Zdravkov, Yordanov, Pashev making his first appearance.
Yeah, his first
appearance. Replaced by Iskranov in the 70th minute and Kostadinov. So this first goal in the 34th minute, we've all seen it. We'll continue to see it, I'm sure, into the future. Sure. The second one in the 61st minute, like you mentioned, Negrete assists on that one as well. He takes a corner kick on the right side and Raul Servin heads it in.
Our spell with the World Cup finals in Mexico was over without the register win again. We held our ground. We stood against these teams. We weren't trashed in any of the matches that we played.
I think everyone would have expected to win against South Korea. I think
for sure. Yeah. This was like a given, but the fact that it didn't happen again singed our hopes and stripes at the time. It just wasn't meant to happen. We qualify, we play well, we reach the stage there, and it just doesn't work. A lack of luck, call it. It's just probably a very unfavorable, the team allocation with those teams that ended up with us. They were all fairly strong. You have Italy and Argentina. And previous qualifications, we ended up with Brazil twice in the same group, with the Netherlands in 1974. So, but no, this is not an excuse, obviously. You can squeeze a draw against Italy in the first match. You definitely can beat the South Koreans. You can even draw against Argentina. Why not?
Do you remember if Vutsov was criticized for his tactics, or was qualification success in itself?
I personally think that after, I mentioned, that we failed to appear in 3 Euro finals and 2 World Cups since 1974, I think the fact that we managed to reach the finals after 12 years was a success in itself, and we had to give it to Vutsov for achieving this. So I personally think, because if you criticize him, what would the criticism be? You read the lineups for all the 4 matches. Yeah, he obviously stuck to a bulk of 5 players that he didn't move, 6 players that he didn't really move. But they were all kind of the bulk of the team, more or less. He made those substitutions throughout. He was moving things around. It wasn't like he had the stale tactics just to stringently wait for this group of 11 players to win it. No, he was taking the decision, a variety of decisions as he went along. He thought that this would work at this particular moment in time. I don't really remember how the media reacted. Well, the media that was heavily censored and controlled during communist times, of course. But even back, probably, no, I don't think too much criticism was thrown his way. After all, a string of coaches before him failed to achieve this. And I think this also had to be acknowledged. And we reached the second stage. After all, one of the targets was hit.
In terms of tactics, he used a zonal marking. Arabov was sweeper, and
Yes,
with Dimitrov in center of defense. Right back, you have Zdravkov. On the left, you have either Alexander Markov or Petrov. Sirakov would be the intercepting midfielder. On the right, you have Satkov and Gospodinov and Getov in the middle. So that was kind of standard formation. Up front, he made some changes. So Iskrenov, Mladenov, and in the end, Pashev and even
Pashev,
Kostadinov.
they were rotating.
So it was like a core of players he used throughout.
And well, he relied on them. And again, now that we failed to win again in 4 matches, probably there would be some would say, well, what would have happened if you had given this guy a chance, for example? Because I personally think that Iskrenov wasn't utilized that well. I can't remember whether he was injured during this time, but yeah. And again, I mentioned that the Beroy striker, Vasilda Golov, he was there, but he wasn't given a chance to play. But again, what if? Again, this were we could only speak in hypothetically what could have happened. But again, the best players that Bulgaria had at the time, they were there and they did play. It just didn't quite work out.
And there have been other World Cups where there are teams who are impressive in the qualification phase, but somehow they don't perform as well in the main event. It seemed like this was kind of the situation with Bulgaria as well, where they defeated France and Yugoslavia and were good, compact, solid side in the qualifiers. But in the World Cup itself, for
Yes.
various reasons, whether the heat or lack of experience, who knows, they just didn't perform as well.
Yeah, it was probably a combination of all this that you said, like the conditions there, the weather conditions for sure. They did affect everyone. But at the end of the day, you had pretty much the same teams that reached the last 4 years earlier in Spain. Like you had the Germans again, you had France that were in the same group as us. So again, so obviously conditions were not such a decisive factor at the end of the day. Probably, again, it's really difficult, when you make those analysis and breakdowns in the aftermath, you could possibly see some mistakes in the coach decisions, probably again. But in Bulgaria, I think it was like the total package was that we were a good team. We did have chances. We do play well. But at the end of the day, it's only the winners that will be remembered. And we, in the fifth consecutive appearance at the World Cup finals, we failed to achieve this. It remained elusive for us. And only time would tell whether and when we could actually achieve this. It was probably saddening at the end of the day when the team returned from Mexico. Again, we were happy that they were there. But again, we were like who wasn't? I mean, we were all expecting them to really produce probably a more memorable performance.
Do you remember if there were any players who received some credit and other players who were maybe seen as scapegoats?
Individually, I don't remember anyone to have been like criticized or officially reprimanded because we didn't have such glaring fouls along the lines of Butsov, own goals that I mentioned earlier. We didn't have such underwhelming events to pull us down. I don't even remember any particular during those goals. What mistakes again? Probably against the goal against Korea, this could have been interference of our defenders, could have been probably better. But we were playing under those awful conditions. I mean, the rain literally didn't stop. We couldn't really blame anyone under such conditions. Overall, no, I don't remember anyone to have been like overtly blamed from the football players for this. Because partially it was success. After all, we reached the second stage. It's not like we were beaten decisively by every team we met there. And we returned right after the group stage was over with our heads bowed. That did not happen, did not occur. So no, I don't. Even if there were any reprimands from some of the players' way, I don't recall any specific names. No, I believe probably as a team they could have been, I don't know, advised to play better next time. So
Was there a feeling that Bulgaria could build upon this World Cup, or maybe was there a feeling of deflation because of the performances?
I wouldn't say expectations you made because the next hurdle to be surmounted was the qualification for the Euro finals, and we have failed to do that, and we had failed to do that until that time. So at least I believe that probably the hopes were that we could retain this team that managed to reach the second stage in the 1986 World Cup finals, and probably based on what they can do and based on their skills, we could finally reach the Euro finals. So this was probably that I think there were some hopes in the air that this could be done because, again, where although the team was, there were some players that probably wouldn't make it to the net because of their age. But there were also young talents that were rising. Again, Stoichkov had already been spotted. The team is capable to reach the Euro finals 2 years later. So I think there was the prevalent sentiment. Let's use that to see whether they will do it. Maybe for building a team in the long term, probably not that much, provided that half of these players will definitely face retirement by the end of the decade. And like the pool of talents wasn't as excessively big as the time. We had like Nikolai Iliev, Christos Stoichkov, probably Boslav Penev as well. But the others, the others from the 1990 team, they were yet to rise to prominence in the mid-1980s. So yeah, probably long-term plans were not made. Let's see how the qualifications for the Euro finals would go first before we start making any more tangible plans about the future.
In the aftermath, Bulgaria just missed out on the 1988 Euros qualification under very dramatic circumstances with that late loss against Scotland that allowed Ireland to qualify to the Euros. Yes. Do you think this, in a way, blocked the team's progress and then Bulgaria missed out on the 1990 World Cup and the 1992 Euros?
I think this was definitely a big blow because we played well. We technically only lost 2 matches, and they were the last two. I mean, we played well. I think we probably gained too much confidence winning 4 and only drawing 2 before the match against Ireland, which we didn't really play very well. We could have drawn even against them, and we could have secured our place at the Euro final before the last match against Scotland, but it did not happen. And the team really didn't produce an outstanding performance back in Dublin. Again, they didn't outdo themselves against Scotland. Against, we were all satisfied. I said, okay, goalless draw, so what? I mean, they'll pull themselves back together for the Euro finals when they reach the final stage. So it's all right, it's fine. And then this goal came, and out of nowhere, and it was so disheartening. I mean, I pretty much is one of the most depressing matches I'd seen in my life. I couldn't even believe it. But yeah, it was what it was. The Scots helped their indirect neighbors from Ireland to qualify. And we had to swallow a very bitter pill. It was heartrending. And this was quite demoralizing as well. And even in the presence of Stoichkov and Penev and Balakov, I think he already came on, Nikolai Iliev again, all those. It didn't really help much. I mean, the memories were still quite poignant when we had to play for the 1990 World Cup finals in Italy. The memories were still quite fresh, and we did really poorly. I think it was reverberations of this loss against Scotland. We even finished last, I remember, and we had Greece, Romania, Denmark in the group. I mean, if you can't win a group like this, I mean, what can you win? This was very heartbreaking. We were staring at a rock bottom. Bulgarian football has reached the very bottom just 2 years after the fiasco against Scotland. And the hopes were not very big. You had this mixture of all the new talent failing to produce anything productive on the international stage. It did affect Bulgaria in a not very positive way. This unfortunate loss in the very last match against Scotland for the qualifications. We did do one better, though, for the Euro finals in 1992 in the group, which was a strong group. We finished 4th, just above San Marino. But we did play well. We came up just 1 point short behind Switzerland. We should have beaten them. I mean, we lost this match in Sofia. It was unfortunate. We could have Scotland qualified this year for the Euro finals in Sweden, 1992. But we did play, actually. I think we only lost 2 matches back then against we drew against Scotland. I think the match against Switzerland were the ones that we lost only. But no, it wasn't enough. At the end of 1991, we had these new talents that had emerged, but their performance was still not as spectacular They were even compared to the football team from the 1980s, the ones that reached the Mexico finals. They didn't really look that better. We just had to wait and see when they would finally start producing more productive and constructive. And they did quite shortly. Definitely, the late 80s were not very propitious times for Bulgarian football. Of course, Vucov had to go. Obviously, I think Hristo Mladenov was summoned back. Yeah, in the late 80s. He was coaching the Bulgarian team when we reached the 1974 football finals. The last time when he had a spell with the Bulgarian squad. Then he was called back in the late 80s. Then Vucov came back again in 1989. So there was a rotation of coaches. I mean, like we were trying to see how we could remedy the situation, how we could actually be able to give these new players a chance, an opportunity to achieve something. And it did come, fortunately, and we were quite lucky. But there was this buffer period between 1988 and 1993. 1992 even, I should say, that, yeah, the hopes were not very high. We were not looking we weren't very hopeful that the team would rise to such prominence like they did in the United States.
In closing, how is this 1986 World Cup remembered by Bulgarian football historians? What is the legacy of this World Cup for Bulgaria in historical, cultural, and sociological terms in an era of communism nearing its end?
Well, definitely, this was considered a fair success. I mean, since 1974, we had failed to reach the World Cup finals. And I think we had to break this deadlock that had been installed upon Bulgarian squad. So definitely there was euphoria in the air when we achieved this. And yes, there were hopes that eventually this team would do one better than the previous ones, which they did by qualifying to the next stage. They didn't humiliate themselves in their performances. They were like more or less narrowly beaten even by such established powers like Argentina, the future world champions, after all. So there was a feeling in there that yes, this team did what they had to do. Again, they came only one goal away from reaching the Euro finals 2 years later. So I think, well, in the political context, this was probably, I can't see how this could be juxtaposed against the political changes that were coming. I'd say this was probably the last outcry of Bulgarian football before the dissolution of the communist regime. So this is how this was probably viewed back then. There was this optimistic feeling in the air in those times before the World Cups, not so, even afterwards, so that we were capable of performing adequately on the international stage. Of course, there were other targets to be hit, but definitely, again, this gathering football players achieved their peak. It's debatable. I would say quite a few of them did make a mark internationally because they were snatched by, like I mentioned earlier, by some teams in Europe, very shortly after. So this means that yes, they were spotted if this is what they actually wanted, because things remain way more flexible after the World Cup. I mean, footballers obviously were allowed to sign contracts with foreign teams, which was pretty much an exception. I just mentioned a few names before that. But after the World Cup, they were given those chances, and quite a few of them went to play for different football teams in Europe. I think this was probably another. We should give it probably to the way they played these World Cup finals, because they did not play badly. I mean, they didn't defame themselves. There wasn't any embarrassing performance to like point a finger at the Bulgarian team and say, "Oh, right, they're the chronic underachievers." I mean, no. I think we did stand our ground with what we had available. We did deserve to also see ourselves on the final stage of the Euro finals 2 years later. But again, we weren't lucky enough to see that. So yeah, definitely, that was a very positive occurrence. It did brighten the spirits of the football fandom in Bulgaria. And I think we were following our players every bit of the way, regardless of their failures.
With that, I would like to thank you for your participation in this interview.
Thank you too
And
for giving me this opportunity, Shahan.
thank you. All
Welcome.
our respective contact information is listed on the blog and
Oh,
podcast. So, Ivan, thank you once again and
you're
hope to
welcome.
continue these discussions on football history.
Yes, yes, we will.
Thank
Okay.
you.